In this movie, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to put a texture on a game object. I'm also going to talk a little bit about nesting game objects. So first of all, what I'm going to do is create a 3D object. Let's create a cube. Then I'm going to create another 3D object, which is a sphere. Now I'd like the sphere on top of the cube. So let me raise its Y value to 1. Actually, let me make that 0.8. Okay, so that's what we have. Now, let's say that I made some complicated game object where I have a sphere on top of a cube, and I want these two to always stay together. I would go up to Game Object, Create Empty, and what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to change the name of it. Let's just call it some game object. Hit enter, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the sphere and the cube, highlight those and drag those on top of some game object. What that does is make the cube and the sphere children of the generic game object called some game object. Now, what's interesting about this, I can zoom in a little bit. If I move some game object, let's make this 1, you can see that both the cube and the sphere move together. Let's make it 2. All right, let's make the Y value 0.5. So whatever I do to some game object, I also do to the cube and sphere, because they're together as children of the object called some game object. All right, let's talk a little bit about textures and materials. To create a texture that you're going to put on a game object, the best way to do it is go into Project View, click on the Create button, create a material. And I'm just going to call this New Material for want of a better name. Now you'll notice that in the inspector a lot of things show up from my new material that allow me to change the properties of it. One of the things I can do is I can change the color of it under this thing called albedo. Albedo is not just a color, it's a color and how it responds to the light. And we'll see that a little bit later in some of the things we do. Once I adjust the color, and maybe I adjust the smoothness and how metallic it looks, I can drag it onto my game object, and my game object assumes that color. Now I'm going to make another new material, and I'm going to call it brick material. And with that highlighted, I'm going to go back up here, and instead of clicking on the color chooser, I'll click on that little bitty dot next to albedo. And one of the selections I'm going to have when this texture window pops up is a brick texture. Now I'll go ahead and choose that. Now you might say, well, how did that brick texture show up? Well, right here in my Assets folder in my Project View, I had previously drug a .png file over that was a picture of some bricks. And I applied it to a material, which I will now then drag onto the block to get a brick effect. Now, one little thing about this, you'll notice that Unity represents the materials on a sphere. That doesn't mean the material only applies to a sphere. You can literally apply it to any game object.